Hello and welcome. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the Light 'em Up Lounge. Welcome back with another exciting show, another exciting guest. It's Wednesday. It's time for our weekly live show. And this week, I'm honored and excited to welcome Oliver Nivaud from United Cigars. As always, our dear friends and fellows, if you have questions, please, when you're watching on Facebook, when you're joining the live stream, put your questions underneath the live stream and I'll happily forward them to Oliver here on the show. And for all of you at the Light 'em Up Lounge via Zoom, chime in, make yourselves heard. We'd love to hear your questions. So without further ado, Oliver, welcome yet again. And thank you so much for taking the time and joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's always nice to sit down with some fellow enthusiasts.
I couldn't agree more. Now, let's do a little deep dive into the history of United, because most people have probably familiarized themselves with United over the last couple of years through the distribution that you do and the incredible track record and business record that you have built over those last couple of years, ever since you started with United. But the name itself, the brand, actually goes way back. And if I'm not mistaken, it was first incorporated in 1901 as a chain of cigar stores. And then by the 20s, it grew to nearly 3,000 shops nationwide, which is stunning. And at some point, it even bought Marvel comics, right? So an amazing story, an amazing track record, lots of history. Now, here we are, 2022. With you running the ship, how does that feel with such a long history and track record? Do you feel, is that a blessing for the brand? Would you say United just reinvented itself over and over again? Where do you feel like you are along that journey, and where do you chime in?
Yeah, so that's such a deep deep question because of the long history. So and first of all, again, thank you again for inviting me on and taking the time to share the United story. But United Cigars was formed as a company in 1901 to what you were referring to earlier, and it grew and then to about 3,000 shops nationwide. It also had, some amazing promotional ideas that we try to kind of incorporate in what we do. But they had United dollars that could be used for promotional items. They had the first flying cigar lounge. They actually had a plane that was the United Cigar Lounge. So there's just a tremendous history, and the deeper that we dig, the more we find out, and certain things we'll never probably be able to use. But it's a tremendous history to be a part of. But do we use that and incorporate that into today's model? Not 100%. We love the name, the history, and we've incorporated the old logo into what it is today and just reinvented it. But really taking the reins of United Cigars for me started in 2016 when I came on board. But the cigar group, the United Cigar Group, actually started in 2010 by David Garofalo. And that was more for retailers to work together, because there were a lot of brands that had been manufactured that could be used to help brick and mortar. And then when I came on board, shook things up a little bit, I guess, and just humbled that the trust was there from my past history and the work that I had done, that trusted me enough to kind of take the company and put it to a proper direction and get it on the map, because it was a very small company. We began with just our house brands, and then in 2012 took on the distribution of selected tobacco, which is Atabey, Byron, and Bandolero. And they would attend the show once a year. They would attend at the time, RTDA, which was an IPCPR, and now we know it as PCA. That was once a year. And if an account was open, they would be contacted at the show and just, talk to at the show. And then that was really it. If orders needed to be placed, they had to call in. So it was a very hands-off company at the time. And then when I started in 2016, there were a handful of brands at the time. I think we had about 12, where we're up to 17 brands on the market. now, and about 20 in the portfolio with the brands to come. So I looked at the portfolio and said that in my mind, I said, these are all fantastic brands to sit down and smoke, but just unknown. So we have to slowly introduce them to the market individually, because it's really hard to kind of throw a portfolio out there of so many brands and have them all stick. It's hard enough to build one brand. So so my job turned into travel, just getting out there and shaking hands and introducing people to the lines. Because once I sat down and smoked the cigars myself, I knew that there was opportunity to change a few that maybe needed some reworking, and then retooling some of the packaging. So there's a long way around your question, but the United brand's been around for a long time, and then I was just humbled to come on board and shake things up for them.
If I'm not mistaken, you have a hospitality background as well, right? So I originally come from the wine and spirits world and five-star hospitality, working at places like the Savoy in London. And I always find it interesting and highly inspiring that in the cigar world, you meet a lot of artists, musicians, people with a hospitality background. How do you think that sort of all comes together, and why is there such a close link between the cigar industry and those more artistic or hospitality orientated segments?
So my background is a little bit of hospitality marketing. My hospitality background actually started when I was a child. My father was in the hotel business. So in London, he worked at the Ritz-Carlton. Then in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, he was at the Preferred Hotels, the Pfister, and then grew from there. So when I say my hospitality background started at an early age, it's because my father was so focused on everything that was going on in the restaurants, and no matter if it was his property or we were just going out to eat, everything was the focus point. So are all the lights on, is the light bulb out, what's the table look like, how the table was set, who's greeting you. It was all, even though he wasn't necessarily directing us, his children, everything he would just talk about and mention, that always stuck in the back of my head. I remember as one of the most embarrassing moments walking out of a cigar or out of a restaurant was when he would tuck the menus into the back of our shirts, because he would want to collect all these menus. And so we were basically, just stealing menus. So as a 12-year-old, I'm walking out with a stiff back because I have a menu tucked in my back, because there was no menu to be downloaded off the internet. There was no website to view. It was all hard copy. So in order to get these, that's what he would do. So I would get the creative, the visual from looking at all these layouts of the menu. So I think the hospitality industry and the creative industry, music, art, it all plays a part. And in the cigar industry, because when you really sit down in a lounge, I think you have that time and that, say that hour to sit down and enjoy a cigar. And that's where you really let your creative juices flow, be it for your business or anything else, because you're now discussing your business, your life, with other people, and we're feeding off of each other. And that's the beauty of a cigar lounge. And I think that just translates itself into the cigar industry. The cigars we purchase visually first, and then we try the cigar, and then we smoke it, and then do we want to go back to it, and do we have a relationship with the brand owner? Do we have a relationship with the shop owner? Do we have a relationship with the people in the lounge that are smoking the same thing? And that's hospitality. And I think, and I believe that the retailers that understand hospitality the most are the most successful in the business.
I think that is an excellent point, and I cannot stress enough that, especially when it comes to the retail experience, it is all about the experience. Especially nowadays, a product or a service is just not enough. Those are highly commoditized, and what ultimately matters is providing that unique experience that will set you or differentiate you from the competition. Not even setting you apart, but it's just different. It makes us who we are, and I think there's a lot of room or lots of opportunity for change in the industry where we can focus on that a bit more and and think holistically as to what are all the surrounding elements that could ultimately alter your cigar moment and your cigar enjoyment. And it's not always just, the olfactory and the gustatory, but the lighting, the music, the furniture that you use, the tactile sensations. If you take all of that into consideration, I think that's an absolute winner. And I'm sure you do the same when you think about your brands and when you draft and craft new renditions of the United Cigars portfolio.
Yeah, well, yeah, 100%. It has to be there has to be a feel. So you're not going to appease to everyone, but when you're looking at how to how to design the packaging, the band, the look, the feel, that's as I mentioned, that's the first part of the cigar experience. So to your point, on the US side, in the US market for, say, Cubans, I was on the retail side for a long time when I worked in Las Vegas, and we had customers that would come in and say, I bought this box, I was just down in Mexico, I just bought this box, it was phenomenal, could you tell me if it's real? At first I would be honest with them, and if it was real or not, I would let them know, and then they would get upset if it was fake. And I'm like, well, you asked my opinion based on what I know, this is what I feel. And then I just kind of changed it. And I would ask them, the first question I would ask, I said, well, did you enjoy the cigar? Oh, it was the best cigar I had. I was on the beach. The sun was setting. I had, my drink. I had my family. It was amazing. Then that's what it is. Take it for what it is, as opposed to trying to associate that cigar with, being real or not. And even, there are, it might be real in Cuba, or in Mexico, or where you travel, and say you go to Cuba and people come back and they say, is this a real real Cuban? Well, it may not be official, but if it's if that's rolled on the island, it probably has Cuban tobacco. So it may not be the official brand, but again, it's about the experience. So if you enjoy it, it's all about that moment in time that you're sharing a conversation with someone, or you're sharing a quiet moment to yourself. That's when the cigar is perfect. So we, when we're looking at design work, we try to look at the feel and, what customer base are we looking at? For United Cigars, as an example, our flagship brand, United, when I was redesigning that package, I went back to, the old feelings and the old memories that I had as a child. And United Cigar to me was very, very American. It had 3,000 shops. It had this, the name in itself, United. So it's United Cigars, uniting manufacturers, uniting retailers, uniting customers. And I was thinking back when I looked at it, I really, my childhood memory I had of Evel Knievel. And it was just bringing all walks of life. He was, this stunt guy. He had the stars and the stripes, and it was just this feel. So I really like the pinstripe idea. And on our box, we have the red, white, and blue pinstripes. We have the stars, the United logo. We kind of retooled from what it was originally, but just made it more of a shield, made it more, Americana, I guess. And we wanted to kind of capture that everyday, working man's feel for that cigar, because that's what United is. It's a soft box pressed, it's easy smoking, mild to medium bodied, and it's just a good everyday cigar.
Now, the original mission statement of United Cigars was to sort of improve performance of the shop and the employees, and then create customer loyalty. And as you rightfully said, that whole thought about unity, bringing people together, working together, through an educational strategy in the first place. And I mean, if we think about everything that's happening in the industry today, David Garofalo was way ahead of his time when he conceived and when he conceptualized United back then. Why do you think that his original idea, I wouldn't dare saying, it failed, but probably the time wasn't ripe yet. Why do you think is that? And then secondly, where do you still feel like that original mission statement sort of shines through and still reflects through your current work and the business model of today?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of layers there, but yeah, when David Garofalo first started United Cigar Group, as you alluded to, it was more of um, a community of retailers getting together, understanding and having workshops to explain the ups and downs of a business from a man who's now been in business for over 35 years. And was he a little ahead of his time? Yeah, because you can see it more now, but that original concept for United Cigar Group, I don't think took off as well because of the time and effort and the buy into some unknown brands. They still had to be built. So how we incorporate that united mission statement now is exactly what you said, uniting everyone together. And it's not a a 70s peace, love, and harmony type of uniting, but a cigar, as alluded to earlier, in a lounge, it brings everyone together, all walks of life, because it's that one consistency in the lounge that makes us all similar, and it's that time for us to escape. So we try to look at it as one of our big tags is united we smoke. So if we can all just if you're smoking a different cigar that's not in the United portfolio, that's fine. But are we sitting together and now uniting in a way that we can have a laugh, we can have a memory, we can share our moments together. So that's the united side of the business. And on the customer side, on the manufacturing side, we work with a lot of different retailers or a lot of different manufacturers to bring out new products to the to the market that are older and have been around in the United portfolio, but now can we take a product that's in our portfolio, work with another manufacturer, tweak it a little bit, so now it's something exciting for the retailer, then exciting for the consumer. One project that we just relaunched last year was the cigar bar. The cigar bar we made actually with JRE Tobacco. We took their Aladino cigar, which is a round cigar, and we wanted to box press it to see what the difference would be between a round and a box press. That's an experience that a lot of customers and a lot of consumers just don't have the opportunity to experience. Just like smoking multiple cigars or smoking different leaves, a typical consumer doesn't have that opportunity if they're not traveling down to the factory. So these are all experiences that we try to bring to the market. And it brings, for us, it brings awareness to United because we're working with JRE, a very reputable company. We're using their Aladino cigar, which is a very popular, great, beautiful Corojo cigar. And then we're box pressing it. So we're bringing, the United side. So we're bringing that different experience. So what that does is when it goes to a retailer that is a United cigar retailer, now they have that cigar, they can promote it. They may or may not carry JRE. There are quite a few accounts that we will send our cigar bars to that weren't JRE accounts, and vice versa. So we had to get them started on United so that they could get these special projects. So we work with different manufacturers just to bring something new to the market. In fact, our firecracker, we just did the Big Poppy firecracker this year, and he made it to the Hall of Fame. So congratulations, David Ortiz. But we worked with El Artista on this project. They have the Big Poppy cigar. So we thought, hey, for baseball season, let's do something special. We did the Big Poppy firecracker, and that's something that's ongoing every year. There's always something new on the firecracker side. So working together with other manufacturers and really coming out with something new and creative, interesting for retailers is just our way of uniting the industry.
Now, the old question of what's new is at the same time interesting and exciting for a lot of consumers, but also putting a lot of stress on the manufacturers to always come out with something that hasn't been on the market before. You mentioned that United is taking some of the old stuff, some new innovation, and blending that all into a holistic portfolio. Do you think that ultimately a cohesive and coherent portfolio needs to be wide, or do you go more into depth? Like, which of those directions do you believe more in? And where do you feel like everything that United puts on the market still has that underlying signature, where even though it's totally different blends coming from totally different manufacturers all across the manufacturing countries, it always has sort of an essence of United?
Yeah, so I think in the quick answer, because of the United portfolio, I would have to say wider than it is deep. And I say that because we have such an extensive portfolio, and we're constantly coming out with things new. And new is such a tricky word now, right? There are cigars that have been on the market, but we're tweaking different things, and we're working with different manufacturers, so it's still a product. Like the Firecracker has been around since 2006, but we have our United Firecracker, and then we have the limited releases or limited editions coming out every year. I feel in the last few years, ever since social media really started to play a larger role in the cigar industry, we've bred that consumer that's searching for the new. So has it helped the industry? In a way, because it helps bring new customers. It keeps people interested. Now the negative side, that where it's a double-edged sword, it also changes brand loyalty a little bit for some, where there are still some companies out there that have an extremely dedicated following. So that's still there, where that used to be, for an example, my father was an H. Upmann Romeo and Julieta Monte Cristo smoker. That's all he used to smoke Cuban on the Cuban side, because my family's from France, and that was his start. But those were the brands that he knew of then. And then when they moved to the States, those were the brands that he started with. And that's where his focus is. Now you're looking at an industry that has, we're back in the it seems like thousands of brands. And then within the, manufacturers, there are, extensions of their brands and different blends coming out. So I think the loyalty is changed from what it used to be, but the cigar smokers now are far more educated on their brand, on the brands out there. They're thirsting for an education on not only the cigars themselves, but the industry as a whole and how cigars are made. And there's more opportunity, and this has been going on for a number of years, but there's more opportunity for the consumer to actually go down to factories and see the production and be more hands-on than there ever was. So it's a little tricky because of social media. Everyone's looking for new because of online. Everyone's always searching for what's new. Oh, I have it first. It's kind of like that Eddie Murphy with the ice cream cone. That's what they want. But overall, it helps the industry. It brings new consumers into the retail store, and everyone's smoking a little bit more. So again, to answer that question quickly, United's more of the wider portfolio.
I want to come back to that in a little bit, and we can then talk about the manufacturing component a bit more. But I'm curious, when David Garofalo approached you regarding your role with United, and when you actually considered starting on that journey, what was your vision, and what was the impact that you originally wished to create in order to take United further? Because with what is it now, 7 years that you've been with the company, it evolved tremendously, right? What was your first reaction when David approached you, and where did you want to take this whole thing?
Yeah. Well, first, thank you. Very humbling for you to say that we're even on the map. It's a very difficult industry. There are a tremendous amount of great products and great people. So to start to be placed on the map, it was a lot of work. The focus when I sat down with Dave originally, I had come from Las Vegas, where we were selling, to a different market. All right, those were consumers that were coming into the casinos, spending a little bit more. We had about 12 retail locations in the casinos, so people were used to just spending more because that's where they were. You're paying hotel casino prices. Macanudo Portofino at the time on our cigarette hostess trays were retailing for $20 a piece. Casinos were comping more, so I was coming from a different market. So when I sat down with Dave and I looked at the portfolio, I wasn't familiar with any of the lines because I was mostly on the West Coast. I looked at two lines specifically, the Atabey and Byron, and when you're looking at cigars that are in that price range, I was a little uncertain and a little hesitant thinking that cigars could sell for that much, because even at that point, that was 2016, there were, the price point was still around the $10-12 range, and that was like, oh, I'm spending a lot of money on a cigar. And that has even evolved. Now we're, I think cigars have been pushed to the $12, $13, $14, $17, $20 range, where that's a little more comfortable, for people. So when I sat down and looked at the portfolio, there was a little, I don't even want to say hesitation, but I looked at it, and then I started, smoking some of the brands, and I sat down with Dave, and I remember smoking the Atabey for the first time. And as I was smoking, I was hearing the story of Nelson Alfonso and Atabey, and that changed my perception of cigars completely. Atabey was just, I don't want to say, it just opened my mind to the possibility of what cigars are and what they can be, and how complex a cigar can be, and without it overpowering the palate. So many different layers, and the aging process behind Atabey, being aged for 5 years, the humidor that Nelson Alfonso uses for the aging process, he actually reduces humidity down to 40%, then brings it back up to 70 over the course of 5 years. So the cigar is actually purging and cleaning itself out, and then breathing in 5 different cedars that he uses, which is Cuban, Spanish, Mexican, Brazilian, Lebanese. So it cleans out the cigar. So it's very clean on the palate, so many different layers, very complex, and smoking that, learning about Nelson, learning about the portfolio, I said, I absolutely want to be on board, especially because it had not been brought to the market not on a more national level. So then when I looked at the portfolio and said, how am I going to approach the market with 15 lines, trying to introduce them all, and social media was my first attempt. I said, all right, let me get these brands out. And I remember by the time I got to the last brand, it's almost as if people forgot about the first one. So then I had to take another step back and say, okay, we want retailers to be united. That's our mission. Want us all to work together. Consumers need these brick and mortars to have a lounge to smoke in, to have a place to meet, to network as well. Lounges are a tremendous networking spot. So if we don't have these lounges, we're in trouble. And that was the focus of uniting retailers, uniting consumers, so that we can keep these brick and mortars going when online was, and heavy discounting catalogs were really pushing, and high tax states were really pushing cigar lounges out. So when I looked at the portfolio, I said, this has the depth, and it has the bandwidth to really hit every retailer in the country, because there are cigars from $1.50 all the way up to $40, and every palate will be satisfied with something in the portfolio. So then looking at the cigars that we had, I said that the best thing to do would be to focus on our most premium, and then we can filter everything down. So that year the focus was Atabey, just getting Atabey out. And I knew, and I've told this to Nelson Alfonso, who still he'll thank me and thank United, Dave, and you guys have done a tremendous job building the brand. But all we did, and I tell him, I said, it's your artwork, you created this. All I did, we have the Louvre, we opened the doors, and we just let people in. They had to really just try the brands. And from there, then people understood and recognized the name United. But that first year was not easy. Not that I literally was laughed out of cigar shops, but there were times where it was, no, this is, you're looking at a $30 cigar. There's brand A, B, and C that are in that category that have been around forever. You can't compete there. I don't know this brand, but then again, it was sitting down, having a cigar with them, and moods would change. The understanding of a cigar would change. The misconception of, oh, every cigar, it only costs $1 to make. Why is this cigar? No, this cigar is different. You need to smoke it with me, sit down, understand it, and then make an evaluation. So,
Oliver, sorry if I interrupt you there, but just a quick thought that crossed my mind. Do you think that initially, during those challenging days, Atabey and Byron gave you an easier entry because they were so different? And you could argue that there is no bad marketing. Even if people say, well, are you kidding me? I'll never buy that money for a cigar, but at least people were talking about it. So was your initial concept to build primarily on those and then sort of follow up with the more bread and butter lines?
Yeah, the initial drive was just focusing on the higher end Atabey and Byron, and then from there the Bandolero, which is also Nelson's selected tobacco portfolio. And then we have the La Giana and the United, the Firecracker, everything else there from that initial introduction. Yeah, there's the La Giana Natural, and I'm smoking the La Giana Maduro.
There it is.
But I knew that, again, building from there, because everybody wants luxury, and I think cigars are there no matter what the price point is. Cigars are luxury. So if you're smoking a $5 cigar, you still feel a certain way. And then if you're smoking a $20, $30 cigar, you're feeling a certain way as well. And some are smoking it for the band. You can see that with a lot of the cigars that they smoke, they're smoking it solely for the band. So if they can get that in their hands and they're displaying it and they're showing they're showing the world what they're smoking, it gives them a little peace of mind, and they're relaxing because they're smoking the cigar, but they're also showing this stature, this the sophistication of smoking a cigar. So yeah, my focus was Atabey Byron at first, and everything else would lead its way up. Was that the right way? I don't know. I mean, it's definitely got us to where we are today. And now it's humbling now to contact a retailer, or retailers contact us for a brand. And not only Atabey and Byron. Yes, I'd say that's probably the main reason people are calling, because that's gotten the most recognition and ratings, and it's discussed about in different chat groups. So that's kind of the lead. But now we have other brands that people are noticing. United, Firecracker are two that are in conversation now, which is humbling. So was it the best approach? I don't know. It did get us where we are today. So it did work, and it is working. And again, it's be it Atabey or La Giana. I knew after tasting the portfolio, it was a matter of getting it into people's hands, and the brands that I knew needed some retooling and some rework. We've gone back to the drawing board on some of the blends, and they've changed, and then people now will gravitate towards them. So it's it's been a short road. It's been 6 years, but it's been a long road. Just a lot of work.
Brilliant. Now, somebody just popped in, and I would love to give my dear friend, fellow and brother Jose the mic for a second, because I know he's superbly busy running events in Germany, but it's so greatly appreciated, Jose, that you're tuning in. And so fire away and welcome, brother. Good to see you.
First of all, I would like to thank my good friend Reinhard allowing me to come in and say hello to a dear friend. I am here tonight with a group of really passionate cigar smokers here in and Germany, as you can see, and they all love Fuente. But I have to say hello to the one and only Mr. Oliver Nivaud, my good friend that I've known for many, many years, true passionate cigar lover that I've known from his days working with a family that I appreciate very much. He's working with my good friend, Dave Garofalo, Barry, Mr. J, and all that, doing an amazing job. And you know how much I miss you. I hope to see you in Vegas. And I know that you have a story to tell. You have a great, amazing palate that I trust. And I don't trust a lot of palates, but your palate I trust. How you doing, brother?
Thank you, my man. I'm doing great. Yeah, for those that don't know, I mean, our history goes back way back when I was in Vegas and making trips to the Dominican. You helped out. You were at La Aurora. You helped out tremendously, and we've shared some good conversations at La Campana with a nice Cubano and cigar, coffee. So yeah, long history with Jose. Yes,
and I'm glad. And you know that Dave Garofalo we've been friends for over 20 years. I appreciate what he does for the industry. He is without a doubt one of the best retailers in the business, a person that I call once in a while to get his input, because from him, I've learned a lot. And of course, I hope to see him in Vegas. I hope to see you. So I wanted to take 2 or 3 minutes to say hello. If I would not be doing this tasting seminar with a group of people here in Germany, I would have been on the show and busted your balls all night long.
I know you would, and I'd appreciate that.
All the best. Reinhard, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Wishing everyone a wonderful night, everybody who's tuning in. Ask this guy a lot of questions. This guy knows tobacco. Take my word. He knows it in English. And also, if we have anybody that speaks French, you could ask him in French too.
Yeah.
Good night. Reinhard, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Jose. Wonderful to have you. And please send my regards and our love from the Light 'em Up family to all the wonderful people that you're sharing this evening with. So
yeah, you have some people here that follow the show, but they're with me tonight, with the professor.
Brilliant. That's the way.
Good night.
Have a great evening, Jose, and thanks for jumping on.
Bye.
Let's get Brian involved here. Brian, over to you. All the way from Germany, and Jose chiming in to Southern California. Good to see you.
Hello. Good morning. That's amazing. Yeah, I over in Germany. I have a student in Germany, and we're on Zoom. We do an 8 a.m. call, my time, 5 p.m. there. It works out brilliantly. It's perfect. This is fun. I'm really enjoying this. I love a couple of your references. This is definitely the first time anyone's ever quoted Eddie Murphy Raw on the Light 'em Up for sure. So I'm a fan right away. That's fantastic. And then also the Evel Knievel thing is so funny too. So I grew up in Montana, and I would visit my friends in Butte, and he owned a home in Butte, Montana, right down the street from my friend's house. And it was like kind of an epic sort of mansion looking thing with these huge brick walls and things. And you could drive around it, and it seemed like no one was ever there. But we used to love that because nothing ever happens in Montana. So you get like one famous person, you're like, yeah.
You make it happen in Montana.
Yeah, you do. You do what you can. Yeah, exactly. Like, hey, did you hear Bill Pullman bought a ranch out here somewhere? Whoa, Bill Pullman. Anyway, I had going back a bit, if that's all right, to the hospitality thing we were chatting about. I love what Reinhard was saying about every detail going into it. You go to the restaurant, and it's not just about the food; it's every little piece, the music and the ambiance. And I totally agree with that. I try to create kind of an atmosphere at home. My wife makes fun of me because I do everything has to match. I do like themes, like if it's Taco Tuesday, we got to have margaritas. You have to have the correct, plates, and the glasses have to be right. And y'all play like Tex-Mex or Latin pop or something, and it's like a whole vibe. And it can be annoying, but I like to try to. And then when you go out, you kind of start to realize that you notice these things, or maybe if they're doing it really well, you don't notice. And everything is just working together, and you're feeling the experience of it. But I feel like customers are trained to pick out the one wrong detail and then run to Yelp and talk about it. Like the table was too close to the kitchen or this and that. And it's hard to account for every little thing. I guess you try to cover all the bases. But so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've had situations in the past with consumers and customers, maybe in the cigar world, like, do you have like a pet peeve? What does the person that comes in and has to talk about cigars, you know, is there anything out there that's just like annoying or rubs you the wrong way?
You know, I try to, so to go to your Yelp point, because I was in the hospitality industry, you know, first my father, and then even in Las Vegas, with the company I worked for, they were partners in Casa Fuente. Then they started to steer off into more, you know, mixology programs. So we opened up Rum Bar at the Mirage. There was Tacos and Tequila, which was just restaurant based, not cigar related, but started to get more and more into the hospitality side. And then growing up with that, and then continuing on after I left Las Vegas in the hospitality industry, it's easier for someone to say something negative than it is to say something positive when they're behind a keyboard. When it's, you know, face to face, and 50% of the time it's true and 50% of the time it's not, they're positive, and that's easier for them instead of having the confrontation. So the negative side is just it's easier for them to pick out. So that's the difficult part, you know, with trying to build a brand, because if you make one slight mistake, it seems like it's easier to pick that out in a review, in an article. Even though the article may be favorable, it seems like there still just needs to be a little dig, or they need to pick that out so that they can, you know, that person writing can show something different that they noticed. You know, I mean, you may be familiar with different conventions that go on. The companies that go to those conventions spend a lot of money, a lot of time, and they put a lot of effort forth to make it, you know, worthwhile for everyone, to make it look good. And I know we had one review that it wasn't even a review, it was just discussing the show, that, you know, somebody brought up that there were fingerprints on our booth, and we had glass, so we're wiping it down every day. But when you're looking at a booth that was 20 by 80, you're not going to get every single fingerprint. So for that to come out, that's just a very negative attack. And there was, I don't feel there was a need for it. So my pet peeve is really people looking for something to just throw a jab. And I'm all for, you know, like Jose said, ball busting is fine. Like, you know, we're doing it in light, we're having fun. But I think people need to understand, and be it in this industry or any, especially the hospitality restaurant side, those little reviews and those little negative shots can have a major impact on people's lives. And, you know, they've invested their entire lives into, you know, tobacco. There are some manufacturers, Nick Melillo, Saka, in recent years that have invested, you know, Patina Cigars, Mo, they've invested their entire life into the industry. So to throw these negative jabs at them, it's, you know, that's a pet peeve of mine. Is just when people want to focus more on the negative than the positive, when we have a short amount of time on this earth. And it's not to say that, again, that I'm positive every day, but you know, I know I'm blessed every morning when I get up, and I just try to do my part to, you know, at least put a smile on someone's face, and you know, share my experiences, my ups and downs. I mean, what makes David Garofalo so great, what makes Jose Blanco so great, is that they failed, but then they continue to push forward. You know, you're not going to get to the top without some failure. And you know, the ones that support you along the way and help build you back up, and help building you back up may just be something positive. You know, it's just the way you vocalize and the way you approach situations, you know, should be more positive than negative.
Cool. Well said. I like that. That's great. Thanks. I'm gonna mute, and since this is a lounge, I'm gonna put my lounge music back on. Got Dean Martin. Cheers.
You know what's a great
all about the holistic experience, Brian.
If you're a Dean Martin fan, have you heard you know, the live at the there? I think it's Dean Martin, and it might be Sinatra, but live at the Sands.
Probably on my playlist. I think I've got their entire collection, whatever Spotify has.
Live at the fans is just, it's fan because they interact and talk about ball bus, and they would just jab at each other. They're working the crowd. It's such a good feel. So yeah, if you get a chance, download or look up Live at the Sands. I think it might be the Rat Pack Live at the Sands.
It's good stuff. I'm a big fan of the new Airbnb commercial with the baby, and he's traveling to, I think it's Italy, and they've got Dean Martin. Hey, Mambo, and the baby's like, whoa.
I'll have to check that out.
Thanks.
All right. Cheers. Thanks, Brian.
Yeah.
Oliver, I'd love to dive a little deeper into the manufacturing component. And since you're working with so many different manufacturers, tell us about your experience with those different manufacturers in different countries, and in particular, the mentality, philosophy, and culture element. And for you, being fluent in French, what is your idea or concept about terroir, and how it sort of factors into the manufacturing component, and how the ultimate smoking experience sort of translate that to the end consumer?
So we work with, the La Giana that we're smoking now, that we work closely with Davidoff, that's made in Honduras at the Camacho factory. So that's one aspect of the business that's a little easier to work with. Great communication. I wish my French was, for this industry in particular, was more Spanish fluency, but there are certain manufacturers that are a little easier to deal with. When we work on our projects, like our firecracker, for example, last year we worked with Nick Melillo and we did the Wiseman Maduro firecracker. So that's really just more communication. That I didn't need to travel to the factory, because that particular extension of the firecracker is that manufacturer's blend, just in a shorter vitola that they'll tweak a little, that they maybe want different. So that's working a little bit back and forth. That's a little easier to facilitate. For another example, working with Saka on the Mi Querida firecracker, that original firecracker was the Mi Querida blend, and then he tweaked it a little bit. But then the following year for the re-release, he wanted to do something different, and that's where the discussions happen. But it's more either face to face or over the phone. Switch that to the Tricky Tracka, which then turned into an extension for his line, because the blend did well in the firecracker, well received, and that he did a whole line extension. And then we came out with it on for a third year release, and then now it's a full line for him. So working with different manufacturers, sometimes it's a little easier, and there's not the travel necessary. In fact, we work with Nick Perdomo on the Garofalo line, and I mean, you talk about a man that knows the ins and outs of the industry, and how to get things done. That's Nick Melillo, and also his right hand man Art. That they do tremendous work. So a little easier to get things done. We're working on a new project that will be launched at the PCA this year. A line that's celebrating 250 years, and that we're working with a smaller factory on. So that's required a few more visits and a little more work. So it's a little more hands-on, and that's my travel down to the Dominican. But it's a challenge, because I think United's going through, I would say, almost growing pains in a way, because we're such a small company, but we're expanding so fast, and we're expanding during a time when logistically it's hard to get tobacco or shipments, boxes, labels. So we're experiencing the same thing everyone else is, the back orders, but then we're catching up. So my trips to the Dominican are about 3 to 4 times a year, and I'll go down to the factory. We work with Magia Cubana, which is the Jose Dominguez factory. They manufacture a few of our lines, the United, the Classic, which is our bundle line, the Firecracker, and with that factory, with Jose Dominguez in particular, we work side by side, where if he's traveling to purchase tobacco, I'm able to do, especially with the technology now, I'm able to do a Zoom call or a WhatsApp video call And in fact, we were able to purchase some Ecuadorian wrapper for our new Mezcla Cubana line that was just released. Short Rothschild, 4.5 by 54. But the wrapper was beautiful, but it was you were only able to use that wrapper for a shorter vitola. So, things like that. It's amazing how small the world has become because of things like this, where I'm able to focus on the work here in the US, because I also oversee the sales for United. So that's nationally. It's been reduced a little bit. My travel has been reduced a little bit, one, because of the pandemic, but two, also because we have 6 brokers on the road now. And that was from 2019. We were able to add more and more people because the portfolio was a little more recognized. So, my experience, I get to go down and see the planting, the harvesting, get my hands dirty a little bit. And, that aspect of the business is absolutely brilliant. The craftsmanship, and I'm nowhere, close to being any type of blender, and I won't claim that, but can I sit down? I'll sit down with the master blender. We'll sit down with the factory, and we'll tweak a couple things. Adding 10%. We're experimenting right now with a lot of Dominican Ligero or Dominican broadleaf. So changing the percentage, we'll go a little more 20%. I want to add, go to 30% on Dominican Seco. So that aspect, with my palate, only because I've been smoking for a number of years. And I think my palate was developed, one being French. It was just there, an affinity for fine foods and wine. I was taught at an early age how to, break down wines. So that's helped on the cigar side, tasting different blends. So I would say that the experience and my background going down to the factories and looking at quality, I want to take quality over quantity, before anything. So, it's a great experience working with different factories. It's a juggle. Like I said, some are just operating completely on their own, and it's easy to deal with, and others it's a little more hands-on.
I hear you, and I can only re-emphasize the point that you made about experience in other categories like wine, where you are superbly well trained on a rather analytical sensory evaluation process. And interestingly enough, I always find myself using the very same principles that I was taught at the Wine and Spirit Education Trust to evaluate, no matter what it is. It could be coffee, it could be tea, but also cigars. And it sort of helps tune out some of the noise, and then truly focus on the sensory experience and properly evaluate that. Now, regarding the manufacturing component, our dear friend and our lawyer here, Macy, unfortunately is not here at the lounge with us, but he sends blessings and regards to everybody joining us here on Zoom. He had a question, and he talks about this regularly, the curiosity why the industry seems to stay in line with the traditional manufacturing countries, and why do we not see more cigars or more work coming out of other countries like Colombia, or we all know that there is a tremendous history in the Canary Islands. And maybe as an add-on to that, do you think with the current stress that we see on supply chains and limited availability or limited labor in some of the traditional manufacturing countries, that expanding to new shores and new horizons could be a way forward?
Yeah, I think there's there's opportunity. I think it's been worked on. It's been it's nothing new, right? Haitian tobacco, Costa Rican tobacco, but does that translate to the markets? I think we've seen an evolution as of late with the New World cigars going to the more the old school, more the European markets they were just used to the Cuban blends, but now to experiment with different tobaccos, maybe now there's even more opportunity, again, because of logistics and shortages. Can we do some samplings from other countries where it will translate and it will be a good cigar? I know there have been attempts and it just hasn't translated well, unfortunately. But to speak on different tobaccos, I know with the Majid Cubano factory, we've gone way down to La Mata de Farfan, working on a new farm there to produce a new hybrid of plant that didn't necessarily work out as well. So then you're trying something else. It's a very susceptible plant to the environment. So everything plays a factor. I think there's opportunity there. But it's like it's the acceptability of it as well. Originally it was Italian wines, French wines. That's all people would drink. In California, why are you drinking a Californian wine? And it took time for that to be accepted, but now Californian wines are at the top as well. So I think in the cigar industry, outside of the major three as far as manufacturing, Honduras, Nicaragua, and the Dominican, there were two. I think Nicaragua has really come out, in maybe the last 10 years as a top producer, whereas before it was looked at as, that's not good tobacco. Nobody wants to smoke that. It has to be Dominican. And then Dominican had this stipulation that it was just a mild cigar, and it's not what we want. But over time, things are developed. It's a very old tradition, making cigars, and growing tobacco, but it's still very, very new. I think especially the U.S. market, with the amount of consumption that goes on in the U.S. market. But there's opportunity, and who's going to be the first one to do it?
Peter, you had an excellent question.
I want to say thank you, first of all, to you, Reinhard, because I really appreciate these the Light 'em Up Lounge, the weekly things, and I give you a lot of respect because the way you conducted yourself encourages crucial players in the industry like Oliver to say, I want to be a part of that. And Oliver, I thank you just for being the person you are. I regret to say I'm not very familiar with United Cigars at all. But typically what happens after a Zoom call like this, I see the person that's behind the brand, and then I go get some. So
thank you.
This is going to work. But
thank you.
You talked about tweaking cigars, and you've already answered part of the question about that in your comments a few minutes ago about the process of how that happens. But I'm still curious about the mechanics of it. You say that, for example, you sat down with Steve Saka and created this firecracker. When you tweak a blend, does the blender come to you, and did they disclose what's in it? So you think in your mind, I want to take out some of the Seco and replace it with that. And how does that process of making a cigar better work out in your mind and in reality?
Yeah. So, and Peter, thank you for the question, and I hope you get a chance to live united by trying one of the lines. But working with that, working with someone like a Steve Saka or Nick Melillo, they're the ones that are kind of tweaking everything, and they'll send the cigar, and it's hard to really say something needs to be changed because they nailed it right away. And the Wise Man Maduro is a fantastic cigar, so to try it in a smaller vitola, Nick changed it a little bit, and then when he sent us the samples, it was almost spot on. We didn't go through too many rounds at all. And same with like a Steve Saka, that's his blend for the Mi Querida, and then he wanted to change it for the when he called the Firecracker the Tricky Tracker. Now, when we look at something in the United portfolio, something that I have more say in, that's where we'll absolutely sit down and look at the blends, what's inside of it, and if a cigar is maybe I want a little more sweetness to it, or the powers just a little overpowering. So like that Dominican broadleaf, let's tone that down to maybe 10%, because the strength is there, it's fantastic, but that's overpowering some of the other tobaccos that are in there. So we'll just change the percentage, and then that goes back to the blender, and they'll change things up. working with JRE Tobacco, not only on that cigar bar that we created, box pressing their cigar. That was their blend. So not much was needed. It was box pressed. Let's see what it's like, and it tasted very different. So it was a very exciting project. And we have a new one coming out in the fall as well, where we're working with another manufacturer, and they're box pressing their cigars. So there's not a lot of manipulation of the blend. But when we go to something like the our Abuelo, that's made by JRE, and that is 100% Corojo filler and binder, with a Honduran Habano wrapper. So we kind of tweaked the blend a little bit, but that's going back and forth with, you're talking about Julio Aroa and Justo Aroa, that they know exactly what they're doing. So a little easier to work with, and they'll send a couple different samples. So I guess working with a blend, again, I can't take anything away from the guys that really truly understand the tobaccos to use, where I'm changing a percentage, or maybe making a suggestion, and they'll turn it down because they'll say, oh, that's going to create this. So I know what you want. You want to, maybe a little more, spice, or, woodiness. Let's change it to this, this line. And, when you're adding seco, it's going to be a little bit, it's going to bring it down a little bit. It's not going to be as strong. So if you want to bring something down, add a little more seco, take out the broadleaf. So that's where I'll come in, and it's more of a tasting. It's almost like you sit in a restaurant, you order a cheeseburger, and you say, wow, I'd love a little more crunch. Can you add Fritos to it? That's not what you want to do. It may be good, but that's not the best thing to do. Why don't we we're going to add some romaine, or we're going to add some iceberg, and then you send it back to the kitchen. They bring it back with iceberg or their suggestions, or maybe it's a pickle, maybe it's banana peppers, but there's a certain crunch that they'll be able to add, because that's the chef. That's the one that knows exactly what to do. So I never take it away from the ones that have the background and the experience, and just the time that they've put in to understand it more. And I have a deeper understanding of it now. But they're the chefs that create it.
That's perfect. I love that analogy. And in terms of the answer to the question just before this, about just paying attention to things and being aware of what you're experiencing, that's one of the keys in life to me. I've been a coffee roaster for almost 20 years, and people read the coffee notes on the bags I put out, and they say, is that in there? Is that blueberry really there? Is that peach really there? And I'll say, well, if you pay attention to the cup, if I roast it right and you brew it right and you actually pay attention to it, there's a chance you'll find that, but a lot of times my cup is empty, and I think, what did I just drink? Because I wasn't paying attention. We need 100%. To educate our palates, and there's only one way to do that, is to experience it.
Yeah, it's to experience it, and to be able to sit down with someone like you. So I love coffee, and different countries will produce different strengths, different flavor profiles. So to sit down with someone like you, and as I'm drinking the coffee, to have somebody explain, like I might say that, I'm tasting, in a cigar, for example, I taste popcorn. Okay, well, that's what your mind is triggering, popcorn, right? But you're tasting a little salty, maybe the consistency of the smoke is very smooth, and that's buttery. So now you're putting salt and butter, and then you're getting a little bit of, maybe it's like a grain that you're tasting. And so to be able to then dissect it and say, okay, well, this is what you're tasting. You're tasting the salt component, you're tasting the grain, you're tasting, that butteriness. That's someone like you that would be able to dissect that. But to someone else, it's, I taste popcorn, or I taste blueberry, but that blueberry may be a different fruit, a dried fruit. So to really, break it down and dissect it, that takes years of experience, and being able to sit down with the different leaves and trying them individually, which I've been able to experience. And then you're able to say, okay, this from this region, this country, this is what the tobacco is going to taste like. And that's still not easy to pick out, but there are the masters that can pick that out much more easily than some. But it's in the end, I think actually George Padron said it the best. When I was in Las Vegas, and I was still I was on the retail side in our corporate office, but I was handling the manufacturing and the marketing. But we were doing an event at our corporate store, and we had one customer that used to come in and just regurgitate every flavor note that he read in some publication. And he was doing this to George, and he was like, yeah, I'm looking for something kind of like a butterscotch, black cherry, leathery wood. And I remember George just looked at him, he goes, man, it's just a cigar. So in the end, if we overthink it, we overanalyze it, you're taken away from the experience. And when you really let yourself just let go and experience the cigar, that's when you can start picking out the peach in the coffee, or the Brazilian nut, and you start picking these out. But you need someone to say, that's going to be more of a Brazilian nut. Do you taste that? And they might taste that a little bit more, or they might not be able to taste it at all, but it just comes with time and experience. Yeah.
That goes back to your response to the guy with the Cubans, whether they're real or fake. Yeah. Did you enjoy it? If you enjoy the cigar, don't worry about if you're picking up the notes or not.
And I think some of us have, at least I for one, I forgot why I got into cigar smoking and what it meant. I started at an early age. I was 16. I never really smoked cigarettes. My father was a cigar smoker, as I mentioned, so I used to take cigars from him. So I was lucky enough to smoke Cubans, and then some really nice New World cigars. And for me, it was just that memory of my uncles and him smoking cigars, and then to then sit down and experience that same thing. And then as my palate grew, I was able to now pick out different notes. And as I sat down with people like Jose Blanco, and even Hochi Blanco, but anybody that would share information or give me little tasting notes, then I could see, okay, yeah, I taste that here. So the next time I smoke a cigar with maybe that leaf in there, am I picking that out? So I think it's important when you're smoking a cigar, one, not to overanalyze it, but it's also important to look at the components of the cigar to see what you like or dislike in that cigar. So then you smoke the next cigar that may have the similar components. All right, what do you like or dislike in that cigar? So now you can start to pinpoint, the different regions and the different tobaccos, and what that experience could be.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Noel Rojas and the tasting kit that he put out?
Mm-hmm.
3 different regions with the 3 different primings. That to me was a revelation. But finally, I just want to ask, is there a website that United has that lists the entire portfolio so I can start to whittle things down and choose?
Yeah, absolutely. We're unitedcigargroup.com.
Okay.
In fact, you say those tasting notes. I have this le nez du vin. So it's the nose, but it's a very classic little packet that's put together. So it's got all these different tasting notes, and it has these different scents, these different oils. So it helps you break down the wine. But that's also, I've used this for cigars because Reinhard, you alluded to it earlier, wines, and you take all that experience from the wine side to the cigar side, because they're very similar. But it's similar with food. I mean, we tend to purchase and gravitate towards things with our eyes, and that's why again, social media, some of the people out there that are posting cigar related items, their creativity is amazing, and their eye for how to use the lighting, and they're not professional photographers, but they have a passion for cigars that they're then able to translate that to the pictures, and we do that with food. The way I'll go back to a burger. The way a burger is plated can change the price. Maybe the same ingredients, but it can completely change the price and the experience. We can all sit down, we can all order a cheeseburger now, and it may be the same thing, but depending on where we're eating it, how it's plated, the environment that we're eating it in, it can change the burger completely.
And I would have to add to that, for all the cigar loving community, an amazing kit to use and to study and learn more about your sensory system is Nick Kutro's Pro Palate. The book that he wrote is phenomenal, and the tasting kit, as a part of the Pro Palate experience, is magnificent. So I would highly recommend that to all the people who are curious about the sensory details of cigar enjoyment. So check that one out for sure. And then secondly, Peter, I can only thank you for the kind words that you shared. And I'm humbled, and I'm so grateful for all you guys' support, and so many people who join us on a regular basis, on a weekly basis, spending your precious time with all of us. I cannot thank you enough, and it means everything to me, and it keeps me going every single week. And I'm delighted to be part of this amazing community with fellows and friends here all together. So every single week it's special, and I can guarantee you, I'm thinking of all of you guys and all the ladies and gents who enjoy premium cigars. Whenever we invite people to the show, whenever we write a newsletter or a blog article on Light 'em Up World, it's all for you. And so I very much appreciate it, and I'm grateful for all your support. Thank you. Oliver, one thing that I would love to address, and it's probably not talked about enough on various shows and podcasts and everything, is the sales and distribution component. Last week we tapped a little bit into that because Brian Motola was together with Sebastian Decopé when they joined us from the factory in Honduras. And you being in charge of the national sales for United, you have a lot of experience in that as well. Yes, we can talk all day about blends, about the work at the factory, but ultimately it's the sales and distribution component that brings the experience to the retailer, and from the retailer to the end consumer. What are some of the key components that you have learned on that side of the business? And especially, did you just break your chair?
The little lock that stops you from leaning back. It just clicked.
I know that all too well.
I thought I was going over. Man down.
It wasn't supposed to be a tripping question, so yeah, what did you learn on that side? And what, especially with the portfolio as extensive as United, what's the initial feedback from the retailer? How do you approach them and make sure that they can add some of the portfolio to their humidor? Because that's a tricky matter as well. Everybody's competing for shelf space now and real estate in the humidor.
Yeah, so it's tricky on so many levels, because you're looking at an industry that's so small on the overall tobacco side of, if you look at tobacco and you include everything, as the FDA likes to do, it's a very large industry. But then when you go to the cigar side, it's a very small niche industry. And then within that small industry, you have major companies with huge financial backing that can hurt the smaller companies, because they're overly aggressive with either promotions to the retailers or promotions to the consumer, or they're giving away major items because they have, yes, their product might be doing well, so they're selling a lot, but then they also have the financial backing from other parts of the tobacco industry. So it becomes a challenge for smaller companies that are trying to get out there and get on the shelf. When you sit down with a retailer, sometimes the conversation turns into, well, what kind of free product can I get? Over the years, we've grown this animal of, well, what's free? When you look at the cigar industry and what it takes to produce a cigar, almost all cigars should be $20 or more, based on the number of hands that touch it. But because the crop can be grown 2-3 times a year, and there's an abundance of tobacco, even though we're in a shortage, cigars shouldn't be looked at as a cheap product. But sitting down with retailers, there are great retailers out there, and then there are hobbyists that are out there, and so it can become a challenge. You have to manage each one differently. Some are absentee owners. There are a number of shops that are very reputable, but the owner may be living in a different state, but he's built such a retail empire in a way that they're able to place the right people at the right locations, but it's hard to get the owner when they're making the decision. So when you look at how you want to launch a cigar, for us, we try not to cheapen the line by any means. We try to pass on a lot of the savings that we have because of working directly with the manufacturer and buying the tobacco and taking out some of the added costs. We try to pass that directly onto the retailer. So sitting down with either a new account or existing, you have to manage them each differently. Again, now there are so many different platforms to sell cigars. So you may have, there are and they're not even retailers, but they're business owners that are mainly online or mainly mail order. And then there are some retailers that are only brick and mortar, and then there are some that are brick and mortar and mail order, and then there are some that are just subscription accounts. So we try to work with ones and retailers or business owners that are looking to build more of a relationship. So when I started with the company in 2016, I don't have to report to a board of directors. There's no forced placement. If I go back to hospitality on the liquor side, I know when we had liquor reps come in, there were many times where it was, hey, I got the brand owner coming in. Can you just place this? Or I have to place this month, and I'll give you this free stuff. And that's what the cigar industry has become in a way for some companies. So we try to stay away from that model. Where again, I don't have to report to the board of investors or anyone. So there's no forcing anything. I wanted to have this as more of a long-term game, where it's building relationships, people that want to work with us and that we want to work with. Ultimately, we want to make a product that is that's good for the consumer when they're smoking it, and good for the retailer means they're turning boxes because the product is quality. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer because you just manage everybody different. It's like managing a staff. You have to manage each employee very differently. So every account's very different. And it's not to say that this guy's getting free product and this guy isn't. It's being consistent and fair across the board, but building the brand on quality over volume.
Is this a topic that you also sort of frequently discuss with Dave in order to take some of his extensive retail experience and leveraging on that?
Yeah, 100%. As I talked about earlier, working with David Garofalo, who has 35 plus years of retail experience, then sitting down with Jose Blanco and using his years of experience in all aspects of the tobacco industry. I try to pick different things from each of them and see what's going to work best. In fact, David, he wrote the David versus Goliath book, and it has all these promotions that he's used over the years in his shops that have been successful, but he could write a whole nother book on things that haven't been successful. So one time I was flying out. In fact, I was flying out to Houston, Texas, and I was reading the book on the flight. And when I landed, I said, "Oh, can I do this promotion?" And so it actually, me reading the book actually ended up costing him and the company money. And it was a promotion for lottery tickets, Mega Millions. When you buy a 3-pack, I think it was, you might get a chance to win $50 million. I forget what the Powerball was at that time, but it was a promotion to say, hey, have a chance to win $50 million. So I ended up buying, I think, 100 lottery tickets So just reading his book ended up costing him money. So yeah, there are different promotions that work, and we've been, for the last 2 years, we were running a promotion. Actually, during the pandemic is when we did it, and we just started back up. But we used the Blackstone griddle top, and it would be a promotion. You set it up in the store, and that would be the giveaway. And I've kind of evolved that in my last trip to Frisco, Texas, for the Atabey Lounge at Industrial Cigars. It's a beautiful lounge. They are 100% hospitality focused. Even the customers, I mean, it's this culture that they've bred there, that when a new customer walks in or an existing customer walks in, they're shaking hands with everybody in the room. Everybody is acknowledging everybody, and it's a larger shop, but it's a beautiful shop. So if you're in Frisco, Texas, go check out Industrial Cigars. But what I just did about a couple of weeks ago, we gave away the Blackstone grill again. But what I did is I cooked on the Blackstone. I made tacos for everybody. So I bought about 30 pounds of meat, chicken, chorizo, carne asada, and just all different meats, the tortillas, everything. So I cooked tacos for everybody that night. If you bought, I think it might've been, if you bought, whatever it was, buy 2 cigars, you get 1 taco. If you buy 5 cigars, you got a plate. If you bought a box, you got unlimited tacos. And then we gave away the griddle top at the end of the night. So that was a promotion that I felt for that store, cooking with them as well, because food brings us together. Cooking with them as well just brings everybody closer, and you're able to share deeper conversations and laugh more and have fun. So there was an attachment to the brand. So we gave away that grill that night, and it was fantastic. Just a lot of fun. So yeah, I try to pull from what's out there, but it's a challenge, again, going out in the industry and meeting with different shops.
Very cool story. David, welcome to the lounge. Good to see you.
Oh, you're on mute.
Hi, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Reinhard. I know it's been a while, but work keeps me busy.
It's always great to see you, my man.
Likewise. Well, I heard Oliver talking about, trying to build and learn your palate. And as a chef, I've been doing that. I'm very home top. I don't have any kind of French techniques or New York style, whatever. I don't care. I'm very home top. So, but I've noticed that my palate is different than most of the chefs that I know, and even people that are family who cook. Mine is different. And like when I smoke a cigar, I'm describing the cigar. A lot of my friends are like, I don't know if I taste that. And then some, like when I talked to Jose Blanco, he's like, you hit it right on the head. I talked to Riste from JSK, and I described to him like what my opinions are in different regions on how the tobaccos taste. He's like, dude, that's actually right on. You can get Nicaragua, it's more spice. When you go to Honduras, it's a little bit more on the sweeter side, and more Dominican tobacco is a little more earthy. So he says granted, you got specifics that taste different, but as a general idea, that's about right. Anyways, my question is to you. I know you say that whenever you try to build your own palette, there's different kits and books and whatnot. But what else would you recommend to somebody who's kind of just starting off and wanting to try different cigars? What would you recommend to them?
So it's funny, when I was, again, going back to Las Vegas, when I was working on the retail side for new smokers, because all of our palates are different, and you're saying even with your family, when you're eating food where everyone's all over the place. So I would always jokingly say, you know what, the best thing to do, start from the left, go to the right, and you just have to try everything, because when you sit down in a restaurant, somebody may like spicy food, but for others that spice is way over the top. And so we all have cigars are just so subjective. So when, you know, ratings or reviews come out and it's, you know, this cigar was this, this, and this, that's one person. I know Cigar Journal does a great job where it's a, you know, it's a blind tasting for, you know, 20 plus people. That gives you a true idea of what the cigar is. For somebody that wants to really try to experience the, you know, the different notes in a cigar, look at a brand, well, like the La Giana. La Giana is a Honduran blend, but we have two different wrappers, but 3 different lines. So a good way to experience what a wrapper can do to a cigar is to try the La Giana natural, say a Toro size, and then smoke the La Giana Maduro. So you're going to have an Ecuadorian Connecticut wrapper on a Honduran blend, and then a Mexican San Andreas wrapper on a Honduran blend. And you'll taste how the wrapper can affect the cigar. So that's one aspect. Then you can look at when you're smoking a line like Atabey, there are 12 different vitolas in Atabey, and they all are very unique. When you smoke the Spiritus, which is the Lancero, that's going to be more wrapper forward, and the blend's tweaked a little bit, but still the same filler as, say, the Ritos, which is more of a Toro size. But because of that larger ring gauge, it's much more subdued, and there's not as much of that spice and pepperiness as that Spiritus, which is a smaller ring gauge. So it's a Lancero. So if you're a new smoker, as you know, I was talking about earlier, you should break down a cigar, you know, look up the blend, look up, you know, the binder, wrapper, filler, and see what you like in that blend, and then find something that's similar and smoke that one. Because even the different regions, I mean, Nicaraguan tobacco, can't just say, oh, I don't like Nicaraguan tobacco, or I love Nicaraguan tobacco. There are so many different blends and so many different tobaccos and regions from Nicaragua. So the cigar is going to be different. So try to break down the cigar. And, you know, I think a good example would be a cigar that uses the same filler, but different wrapper.
Right. Yeah. And that's one thing I've definitely learned, especially every Vitola, like you said, is going to be different. I've had, whenever I smoke cigars, I always start off with Robustos, because everybody on every blend typically has a Robusto and a Toro.
Right.
So I try to do Robusto, typically Corona too. Like example, I have a lot of friends who love Liga Privada. I don't see anything wrong with that. People like it. Me personally, I'm not a big Liga fan. I've tried them, and they just, in my opinion, they have too much of a molasses and bitter taste to them. But like I said, it's just my own personal opinion. And by the way, Nicole from the Smoke and Tobacco show, she recommended Atabey to me.
Oh, wow.
Because I told her, I was like, I'm not a big Connecticut fan, but I haven't found one that's good, so you should try Atabey. But I tried a few of them, and I'm going to say the one that you all did for Jeff Borwish at the Corona Lounge, so far is my favorite.
Wow. All right. Yeah, the that was Ritos, had a little more age on it. So that particular ring gauge maybe for you. And going back to your Liga, if you know, there was something that you didn't like, you should try our Bandolero. That's also made by Nelson Alfonso Selected Tobacco. That has an Ecuadorian wrapper, but a darker wrapper. This one uses a little bit of Peruvian Seco, then Nelson's blend inside, so it's a little fuller bodied, but aged for 2 years post roll. So it's very subtle on the palate, but just a tremendous flavor profile. The Retro Hail has that spice for that medium plus bodied, if that's what you're looking for.
And I never, if I don't like it the first time, it's not I never go back to it. I will always go back to it. I'm smoking a Camacho Hard Charger. This is my 3rd time smoking it. First 2 times I didn't like it. This time it's kind of growing a little on me. Mm-hmm. But it's still too straight. It's got great strength, but the flavor profile on it is very mellow and mild. But the strength, I'd say, is probably about medium plus, closer to full body. But it's you know, if you want a cigar that has strength, then I would recommend it to somebody. But as far as flavor, it's just it bombs on flavor in my, like I said, in my opinion. But you know, I started smoking everything under the sun. Reinhard seen my post. He knows I've smoked literally everything by everybody. Well, what I can get my hands on. Let me say it that way.
Right.
And you
Yeah,
know,
and
you mentioned in Houston, Texas. That's actually where I'm at right now. I live in Houston.
oh, okay.
So
Yeah,
so you know,
Smoke Ring or
yeah, I
Joe's.
was going to say Smoke Ring is where I typically go get my stuff. In fact, on my birthday, my wife bought me the Espiritu from Atabey, the
Yeah.
Lancero. She bought me the Lancero Atabey because we walked in the shop. She said, pick a cigar for your birthday. I was like, I kind of want to try that Atabey. I just don't want to spend $30.
Yeah.
And she's like, all right, well, just pick something and go ahead and smoke it. So I picked something up. I want to go smoke it. And she comes back with a 5-pack of LSD and that Atabey. I'm like, God dang it. But I ended up smoking that. I smoked that a few weeks before the Great Smoke. And
No.
man, it was a good cigar. I'll say that. The Lancero was good, but
Lancero.
that Corona 25 was just a little better in my opinion.
Yeah, and different ring gauge. So it's gonna be different on your palate. I think it sounds like and our palates change. I know, again, growing up, when you're starting to experiment, as a high schooler, or I don't know everyone's drinking background, but you're taking spirits and whatever, be it vodka or bourbons, and you're like, oh yeah, and we got to mix it in with something sweeter because your palate's just not ready for that strength. Like if you asked me back then, would you sit down and sip a tequila? I'd be like, no way. But now that's all I drink. I'll sit down and sip different tequilas because it pleases my palate now. Is it more refined, more a better palate than what it was before? Only because I've experienced different things and I've allowed myself to experience the different spirits. And it's the same with cigars. 100%.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I'm same with me. I used to be a Jack and Coke kind of guy, and now I can't taste Jack and Coke anymore. It's too sweet.
Yeah, it's too sweet. And so Atabey, you say, well, I don't want to spend that that right now on a cigar. Well, your time when you're sitting in that lounge and you're sitting in that chair, I tend to find that the Atabey and Byron smoke a little bit slower than other cigars. It's a very dense cigar, a lot of tobacco in there, and because of that aging process, and I think because of the experience, when I sit down and smoke it, I tend to smoke it a little bit slower, only because I'm caught up in the cigar itself. And we've converted people that used to be, in fact, one guy was a bundle smoker and had money, he still has money, very, very wealthy guy, but would just smoke bundles. And the shop owner said, you know what, you need to try this Byron. And he's like, I'm not spending, $35 on Byron. He's like, listen, whatever. It's like, listen, Reinhard, you smoke 3 of these cigars a day. That's already costing you, $30, say, for the day. Try this one. It's a little bit more, but it's one cigar. He sat and he smoked the Byron Aristocrat for 4 hours. And he's a Byron Aristocrat box buyer now. So that was a guy that was buying, the bundles and the cigars under $10. He's now buying a box that's 800 plus, because the experience, the length of time, how it made him feel, just the overall experience of sitting down smoking that Aristocrat for as long as he did. He's like, there's value in quality. So,
and that's actually another good point. When I was at the Great Smoke, I was gifted by a really good friend a Opus X Dubai edition, and it was the short, it was like a short Churchill size. Anyways, he gives me one, and I wait, and I go and smoke it. I recently smoked it. It's like probably 50 by 4 cigar. and I'm a fast smoker. Typically, I can smoke a Robusto in about an hour, maybe 45 minutes. But this freaking cigar took me almost 3.5 hours to smoke.
Yeah.
Because I was enjoying it. I was savoring it. I took my time with it. And it passed what one of my buddies, Duncan, calls a Cuban test, where when you put it down for 5 minutes, you pick it back up, it still smokes.
Right.
So it was, oh man, Carlito did a good job with that cigar. Would I pay $120 for a stick? No. No. But it was, I'll say this, it was a really good cigar. You know, I've smoked the Davidoff Chef Edition. When it comes to cost, like when I said it was that much, it was too much. At that time, I spent a lot of money for my birthday, so I didn't want to spend more. I recently bought that Davidoff Chef Edition, a box of it. So I was like, I'm gonna hold off on spending. I already got myself a gift.
Right.
But anyways, I recently smoked one, and a well-constructed cigar for me, I don't mind spending money on. If it's done right, if it's done fair, if the price is fair, I'll buy it. The Unicorn from Saka, I feel like it's overpriced. Anyways, point is that when it comes to a good cigar, I don't mind spending the money, but it has to be a good cigar.
Right. Yeah, and it is all. I mean, you mentioned that you were you're a chef, not professionally trained, but you're in a restaurant. You own you cook for family, or you have a business?
So my family used to own a business, and my dad was ready to retire, but he didn't want to put all the pressure of owning the restaurant on my shoulder, because me and him, we pretty much worked together from the ground up. So we ran the restaurant. It caught on fire, but we were rebuilding. He's like, I'm ready to retire. So we found some family friends to rent it out, and I work with these new people to build the restaurant back up again. And once they don't need me, I'm supposed to quit, but that might be happening earlier than I really want to, because I can't stand them anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so
no, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, so on the restaurant side, when you look at, would I pay that much, or it's not worth it? It might not be, and not to say that you don't have, your wealth and your, how much you make and how much you have. It's not saying, I'm not saying anything that it reflects on that, but for you, that cigar is not worth it. But it's like when you plate something at your restaurant, or when you look at, I see, a line at McDonald's, and it makes me sick. And there's say an In-N-Out across the street, or a Five Guys across the street. I'm like, I'd pay more for that burger, because it's just a better burger. But for some, they just want to go, and you'll find, like for you, you'll find that burger that's worth that amount of money. And it's just, it's subjective. So yeah, it's hard for me, especially with our portfolio, to say that, something's not worth it, but
and
at least
Oliver,
a lot. I think that's exactly where United does an excellent job, because you have so many different offers for different palettes and for different budgets, right? And that's what ultimately matters.
Yeah.
Oliver, first of all, Macy was asking for a quick tequila recommendation, or maybe some.
A good tequila. I've been on Código, the rosé, which is aged in Cabernet barrels, and that's a new one that I came across that I've really been enjoying. I'm starting to see it a little bit more. Casamigos is good. I actually like their mezcal. Is actually a very good sipping mezcal. But I drink a lot of their añejo. I think it's really good. There's controversy out there on Casamigos. Some are saying that it has a sweetener added to it, because it's a little sweet, especially, and their reposado as well. But I think it's an excellent tequila. El Tesoro is another one that I really enjoy. And sometimes I'll pick up a nice bottle that I know is just going to sit. But the Milagro, they have a really nice aged one, and the Jose Cuervo, I think it's the extra añejo, that's very good. So yeah, I'd say try the Código, that one, it's called rosé. It's aged in Cabernet barrels.
Very interesting. Cool. And then before we get to the end of the show, and since you mentioned controversy, a lot is going on in the industry now. Challenges, opportunities. The business is booming, but there's shortages in terms of tobacco, labor, all sorts of supply chain issues, and then recently the Cuban side just announced tremendous price increases all over the board, let alone some of the marketing controversies that are going on with different stuff that you put on a box or on the cigar ring. When you look at the not so distant future of the industry, are you bullish, bearish? What's your gut feeling as to where the industry is headed as a whole?
So yeah, again, a lot of layers there. So the industry as a whole is, I think it's healthy. What we need to look at right now, from what I'm seeing, yes, there's a shortage, but I think there was just an abundance of new smokers, and everybody during the pandemic, they were smoking more, they were purchasing more, and the U.S. purchases more tobacco, imports more cigars than the entire world combined. But I think as U.S. smokers, we seem to hoard more cigars and search for more cigars that I think consumers are sitting on a lot of product right now. And with the uncertainty of where the market's going, it may change from, higher end cigars. They'll still purchase those, but they're switching back over to more approachable cigars because they are consuming more that they can't, I'll say just for Atabey and Byron, we still have the consumers that are buying the boxes, but they're looking for an alternative as well. And a lot of people were looking for alternatives within our portfolio. I've had these conversations where, those Atabey and Byron smokers are like, well, what's something just for, kind of my everyday as well. And I've directed them to La Giana. If you're looking for, a nice, easy smoking cigar, the natural is fantastic. So it's more approachable in pricing. So I think industry as a whole, it's definitely, we're going through a little shakeup right now. Because again, we have a more educated smoker. I think people have more, a little more disposable income, so they are buying more. But we're sitting on a lot of product at our homes. I know, conversations of cooladors, and I have to buy a new humidor, and I have to buy a new cabinet. I'm building a humidor in my closet because I have so many cigars. So I don't know what the tipping point is. At some point, we're going to have to, as a consumer, we're going to have to start smoking the cigars that we purchased. You can't take them with you. I mean, I remember I started with a 50 count humidor, and it was almost a ritual where every week I would take those cigars out and, wipe down my humidor, look at them, and then put them back like a little kid with Matchbox cars. And, now it's changed too. I have a cabinet, and I have 3 coolers, downstairs, because that's, I'm kind of rotating through those products. But I think consumers are sitting on a lot of products. So, retailers, we're buying heavy as well during the pandemic because sales were just going up. I think that's kind of changed where it's, plateaued a little bit. So hopefully we don't see a big dip, but people are starting to go back to work, and offices are opening back up, travel's opening back up. So we'll see what happens in the coming years. But I feel like what did happen, we're also expanding to new markets. I've had, other countries reaching out to look for distribution because they're looking for newer products. So, that might, that will help, level off the scales a little bit. So you might see maybe a little bit, less importing on the US side, but other countries will start to go up.
I hear you. Absolutely. Especially with the global shift that's going on, where the international markets are now leaning more and more towards non-Cuban cigars, whereas before the distribution of like Cubans and then Davidoffs in comparison to like non-Cuban cigars was rather unbalanced compared to what it is now. So
I love that Cuban cigars are going up in price. keep going up, because people need to search for the alternative. And
Very true.
yeah, we've been again, back to the wine analogy. Californian wines, right, are now at the top. So now you're going to have all these new world cigars that are going into the different markets, and people are searching for better price, more affordable cigars for their everyday consumption. And that's where you have the Dominican, Nicaraguan, Honduran cigars.
Absolutely. Oliver, what a pleasure. Time flies, and I'm truly grateful for everything that you have presented us with, everything that you have shared with us. I certainly hope that in the near future we will have a chance to probably get Mr. Nelson Alfonso on the show to talk more specifically about Atabey and Byron, because we didn't really tap into that all too much, and there's so many layers to be unearthed, and I would love for Mr. Alfonso to join us, so we can talk a little bit about a bit more about that. But what a pleasure to learn more about United Cigars in general, and your amazing journey with that. I wish you nothing but the very best, lots of success and continued success. And I look forward to hopefully seeing you in Vegas in just a few months' time. And until then, all the very best again. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. I hope to see you in Vegas. We're at booth 361. We have United Cigars, because now United Cigars has grown so much. We have our own booth where we were sharing a booth with Nelson. We're right next to him. We have United Cigars, and then Nelson Selected Tobacco. There are 2 new lines coming out this year. So his booth has expanded. We have the Bandolero Firecracker coming out in June. So that's a collaboration we did. So yeah, a lot of great things on the horizon, and we're only have the ability to do that because of people like you sharing, giving me the opportunity to share our story, and the guys on the panel that are trying our cigars. So it's humbling to hear somebody say that they've tried our cigar, and David smoking the Lancero, and all you guys. I appreciate the time that you've given me to share the story.
Thank you so much, Oliver. We'll see you in due time. Again, all the very best. And for you guys, we'll see you all next week here on the show. Another exciting one coming up. And I really look forward to next week welcoming Abe the Babney from Smoke Inn. So tune in next week for another Light 'em Up show. And until then, be safe, be well, and light 'em up. Thank you. Goodbye for today.
Take care.